Hello and welcome to Dateline New Haven on WNHH-FM, New Haven's home for community radio. I'm Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. Well, here's a man who's making the city tick, tick, tick quite a bit. He always has as a police officer, community organizer. Now he's trying to do it, trying to become the next mayor of the city of New Haven. Shafiq Abdussabur. He also, you'll recognize him WNHH because he co-hosts Urban Talk Radio. But today he's the guest. He's in the hot seat. We got the hot lamp on him to question him about his mayoral run. Shafiq Abdussabur, thank you for coming and joining the guest chair. We're on the co-host chair on WNHH-FM.
Thank you, Paul. Good morning, New Haven.
So, Shafiq, why are you running for mayor? A lot of the stuff you could do. You're retired as a cop. You go lecture to the FBI. Why are you running for mayor?
Well, it's not because I need the money. Uh-huh. And it's not because I need a job, right?
Right.
Because, I grew up in this city, and I was raised by two parents. And my mother had me when she was young. And so I've had the ability, being the son of a young mother, to watch my mother go through the struggle she went through, to be young enough to watch my grandfather, who had a sixth grade education, come here, work for this great city, and then be able to retire on a city pension. My grandfather retired with a pension from the sewage plant in New Haven.
I never knew that. So at the time, was that a city agency? Because now your Water Pollution Control Authority is a quasi-public, meaning they get the benefits of being public, but they can rip us off like a private company and not answer our calls.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't really know. I know that my grandfather and my great-uncles, my Uncle Cliff, my Uncle Sam, my Uncle Cliff is still alive, my grandfather, and my Uncle Sam have since passed.
And your mom's still around because we see her in the news in West Hills.
Yeah.
She got fired. Your mom got fired. She was in the Black Panthers, right?
Yeah. My mother calls me now every 5 minutes, of course, right? But I'll hit back to that. But no, so
Wait, why does she call you every 5 minutes?
Oh, yeah, I'll tell you.
She's telling you how to run for mayor?
She's a critic. She's you better do this, and you better do that, and you better tell the people this, and you better, don't you.
So how many times did you screw up according to your mom? You only announced last week, Shafiq, so you can't have screwed up too much yet.
No, I have actually not screwed up because I pick up the phone every time she calls, and she says, called me yesterday, and I picked up the phone, and she said, oh wow, you picked up the phone. I said, yeah. I said, of course I've got time to talk to my mother. I always got time to talk to my mother when I'm running for mayor. She says, well, you didn't call me a lot before, pick up the phone a lot before you was running for mayor. I said, yeah, but now you can comment on me.
Now you need her vote. That's the big thing.
Yeah. So she started laughing, but yeah, it's just been great. But like I said, me and my mother.
Well, the question is, why are you running for mayor? You start talking about having roots and family.
So why am I running for mayor? So it's because of roots and family. That's exactly what it's about, Paul. This is about roots and family and relationships and people that I have known my whole life, new people that I have met in New Haven, people who have mentored me in this city. It's about the city. I mean, you should be able to grow up in the city of New Haven as a little child and see your success as a little child in the future of New Haven.
Actually, this is something I was going to ask you later in the interview, but it kind of flows from this. There are two kind of arguments that are made when people run for mayor and what the candidates say. And sometimes people are looking for different things. So sometimes they say you want a mayor who knows the community. When something happens on a block in Edgewood, in the Hill, in Beaver Hills, in Dixwell, they want someone who knows people. They know what has happened in the past. They know who to talk to if there's a problem. They understand because they've lived through it. And then sometimes people in elections like to vote for people who don't have the local ties because they say we don't want you to be encumbered by compromise because you know too many people, the same old people. So like when Justin Ellicker got elected, the argument was he hasn't been there that long, but long enough, and he'll bring in new people, new blood. He won't have those old alliances. And then other times people will elect like a John Daniels or a John DeStefano or a Tony Harp and say, well, they've put a lot of time into the city. They know how the city runs. They know those people. They know, like I remember if something happened, let's say in Edgewood, and there was that thing with the armed patrol of the synagogue. DeStefano was on the phone with, 10 different people. He's known his whole life. Just say, tell me what's going on. Who do I talk to? How's it get done? Other people say, those kind of relationships led to you making bad decisions in government because you want to reward your friends. Then other people say it's good to have those relationships because a city doesn't work unless everyone's bought in and worked together. So that's a long-winded question, Shafiq. Basically, should people vote for Shafiq because he knows everybody in town? He's been here a long time. It's third generation, but also you've been a cop, a community organizer, an athlete. You've been everywhere. Everybody knows Shafiq. Or should they vote for someone who doesn't have Shafiq's friendships and relationships so that they don't have to worry about friends being taken care of?
Right. I don't think people should ever vote for anyone because of their friends.
No, I mean who their friends are. I
Right.
meant, is it good to have local ties, or do local ties too much get in the way? Like we have a whole government now of people. We just had a new person named as this violence coordinator, City Hall. We had a chief administrative officer. Where we're getting people we hadn't seen before in government.
Correct.
People, and some people say, well, you don't know our community. How are you going to do that job? Other people say, well, you're a fresh face without seeing things the old way and learning it. You know what I'm saying?
So I
There's
think
two
it comes
sides.
down to this. I think it comes down to, are we trying to run a city to solve past problems, current problems, and avoid problems in the future? Or are we just, trying to do an experiment, right? Based on restart, right? So if the concept is, hey, let's restart New Haven, well, every time you restart New Haven, you lose something. And what you lose is you lose the ability of the knowledge that came prior to that. What I will say is this. I am born and raised in this city. I was born at Yale University. On the 29th of January at the Marriott, we will hold our campaign kickoff. The doctor that delivered me will be there.
Who's that?
The doctor that delivered me.
Who delivered you?
I got to look into the.
But it wasn't Marshall Holly, because Marshall Holly's dead. He delivered my kids.
I tell you exactly what, because my mother just sent me.
Well, we can wait. A mom called. So mom told you better bring the doctor.
My mother calls me. She's Dr. Sorrell. So my mother is like, guess what? Dr. Sorrell has been asking about, because he asked about
But
me.
we had this talking about policing, too.
Right.
We had a police chief brought in who wasn't really tied to the community. The argument was that person would do things more technocratically, more efficiently. And then the community kind of said, no, we wanted a police chief who knew people, kind of
That's correct.
been in the trenches with people.
Well, we go back and forth with this.
Yeah.
Here's the deal. I believe in the New Haven voters. I believe in my New Haven citizens. The concept that the people among us cannot govern us, patrol us, teach us, serve us is a massive disrespect to the residents and the city and the community of New Haven. What are you saying about us when you say this stuff? Are you saying that New Haven is filled with corrupt voters and corrupt taxpayers?
Or people who aren't good at things.
Right, that we lack some type of moral integrity, have people in this city that we can't govern ourselves? Let's talk about the history of New Haven. The history of New Haven has its roots. Yes, slaves were brought into New Haven. Let's be honest about that, right? But we also
This
have
is the corner they're renaming.
right.
The first
But we
slave.
also have the Irish that were initially brought here as indentured servants, those who were jailed until they could buy their way to freedom. We had the Italians that came here from Ellis Island. We had the Jews that came here. People have all come here with a struggle story. I talked to the Chinese community, and the Chinese community says, you know what? We came here with one bag on our back from China, immigrating here. This is a city of immigrants. And immigrants, we know, are people that are highly capable of having integrity. They have a lot of family values. So we've coexisted in this city for all of these, decades. And we've built a great city. And then there's this new thought of, oh, no, they're not capable of managing each other because they know each other. That's called community. Community is called a place where everybody does know everybody. Neighborhoods is called a place where families know everybody. Strong families build strong neighborhoods build strong communities, and a strong community builds a strong city. And when you start coming from outside of that, bringing people in, nope, we can't trust this person, we got to bring this person in. Well, here's what happens. You handicap sometimes a person that has great talent, and you handicap them without having the knowledge of the history of the city, the relationships that they may need in the community to get things done. And then people are frustrated. And then on top of that, people are set up for failure. Look at all the people that have left this city in the last 3 years that were good administrators, that were qualified. that were handicapped. They were set up for failure. They left.
Who are you thinking of?
Oh, the police chief, Renee Dominguez. I said it to her. I had a personal conversation with her. I said, watch yourself. Be careful. Don't get...
So you think she was the right choice?
I'm not saying she was the right choice, but she was never put in a position to actually have her talents realized. She was thrown in this thing with lack of resources, not enough police
You think
officers.
she was connected to the community?
I think she had a connection to the community. I watched her, as she grew into her career. She was compassionate. She was concerned. She was a mom. She was a professional. But how do you do that in a city where you've got all of this politics flying around you?
How about the current chief?
Current chief is good. I mean, Jacobson is a different style of chief, so his approach to the community is different. But you got to look at the people. Look at the people who left. We've lost our superintendent. We have no superintendent. We have 8,000 to 9,000 kids.
We have Eileen Tracy. She's retiring at the end of the year, but she's the superintendent.
She's leaving. Who's coming? What are we waiting for?
Well, we're waiting to remind people to listen to Dateline New Haven. Shafiq Abdussabur, Democratic candidate for mayor. So here's the big thing, Shafiq.
Yes, sir.
What are you going to do about NIPS? So I've been hearing out of nowhere the last couple of days, different people saying, what's up with the NIPS? And this is what they tell me, Shafiq. They say
NIPS?
The
nip
NIPS.
bottles. The nip bottles.
So what they say is they start talking math at me.
Right.
They count. One woman yesterday said to me, she lives in like Amity, like Beverly Hills, near Davis Street School.
Mm-hmm.
Said, I just took a walk picking up trash, and I forget the number, dozens and dozens of nip bottles just on a few blocks. Someone else said I was walking from West Elm to Mayoral or something, and in 4 blocks he had like 60 nip bottles. What are you going to do about the nips if you're elected mayor?
Let's talk about nips.
Let's talk about nips.
Let's talk about nips.
All right.
Why do people drink nips? Why do we see them in such large volume? Here's why. We have a city full of violence. We have a city right now in many areas of our city that's full of disparity. You've got people on a housing list for 3 years waiting to get what appears to be affordable housing, which we are not building affordable housing, right? We have low-income housing and we have market rate housing in this city. And so you have people who have homeless insecurity. You have 30,000 people with food insecurity. You've got people in this city getting shot almost every other day. Every 72 hours, somebody is getting injured with a bullet on the New Haven street somewhere in this city, not including getting hit by a car, not including getting hit on their bike, not including the fatal accidents because all the traffic is moving around. You add that up of all the people who've gotten shot and killed in this city, robbed, raped, and burglarized, and then we don't have a good job market to provide good jobs for people. Why do you think people might drink a nip?
Well,
Because Paul, according to the crisis intervention model, this is a way that people self-medicate themselves.
Yeah, that's why you have part of the reason you have alcoholism. Alcohol is also a disease.
Correct.
And you
That's
have
correct.
nips because people can't afford the bigger bottles.
Absolutely.
So
And
some people think sometimes they try to ban nips or tell stores not to sell nips. Other people say that's not fair to people with lower income because other people drink, like I buy bourbon,
That's
right?
correct.
But I don't buy nips.
Absolutely.
I don't hang out on the street and drink it. But that doesn't mean, is it being discriminatory
and here's
against
the thing,
people who
Paul.
have less
And
money
here's-
to say we don't want them drinking their nips?
Here's what I know growing up in New Haven. Okay? They did a study, and I believe it was CARE. CARE did a study and showed, and they did that study back, I believe, in 2006. They showed that New Haven had more liquor stores in the African-American community by square block than any other place.
I remember that study. Yeah,
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Why? Because it thrives on what? It thrives on the effects of...
So you're saying the nip litter is just related to enough economic opportunity for people?
It's related to the effects of concentrated poverty in this city.
And in fact, you led the charge with your neighbors to stop Paramount Liquors from staying in business, which is not just trash, but there was a lot of crime happening because it wasn't a well-run store on
Right.
Whaling.
So let me just...
But isn't there a deeper issue? We're always going to have
Yeah,
alcoholism. Is it partly a trash issue?
Right. So let me just
public spaces?
correct that a little bit. So I didn't lead the charge. The charge was actually led by the community. What I did is I supported the community.
You spoke up for them.
Yeah,
at the hearings,
as their alder. Yes, I
Right.
did. My goal was not to close the package store.
Have them run it well.
Because Harry, like I said in the public testimony, Harry is a friend of mine. So I wasn't out to close and injure his business. I was out to make sure that he was going to comply with the rules and regulations as it related to him having a liquor license. So that was what my support was for that
that's fair.
community.
Yeah.
And as I said in the testimony, and this is what I'm saying now when you say, why am I running for mayor? Because Harry might be my friend, but his friendship cannot supersede my relationship with my granddaughter who's 2 years old that has to walk by all of that garbage and trash and people who are inebriated and the violence. I can't sacrifice what might be a profitable relationship
So how does that
over
come back to
safety.
Nips? So you were taking a position where you didn't want to hit Harry as long as Harry followed the rules, but
Correct.
Harry wasn't able to follow the rules.
And that's correct. That decision was made by the Liquor Commission, which I had no involvement in making that decision. So I'd be very clear about that.
But you kind of knew everybody. You knew the neighbors who wanted you to speak up. You knew the
Absolutely.
owner who wanted you to let him make a living as long as he followed the rules.
That's correct.
What about trash and nips? Why are so many nip bottles? Is it just because that we've always had alcoholism?
Well, I think the other part is this too. Public Works is understaffed. That's number one. Public Works is understaffed. In fact, I talked with workers in the field. So I didn't do the whole look into math. I talked to them on the field, and I said, hey, actually, I was talking to a Public Works worker when they were paving Percival Street, which was one of the things that I had done as an alder. When I ran for alder, what I noticed was the areas that were horrible looking, trash everywhere, crushed up, the street was raggedy, the sidewalks was raggedy, were all the places in my ward that had low voter turnout. In those areas, they had no ward chair representation. They had no co-chairs living on that street at all, right? And so it was kind of like they wasn't on the voter rolls, based on the strategy. If I had to follow the strategy, I should have not even really been knocking on the doors over there because it would have yielded me a low return. But my belief is go to the place where the people are most underserved and give them what they need, and then they'll get involved. So Percival Street, I had on the list.
So is Public Works having better cleanup of trash? Is there more
Nah,
nips
man.
because they're not cleaning the trash
So
enough?
here's what the Public Works worker told me when they was paving Percival Street, which I'm very proud of. Percival Street looks beautiful. I said, what's going on, brother? He said, good. I said, so tell me about Public Works. He said, it's a mess. He said, let me tell you what's going on. He said, we don't have enough supervisors. They're hiring new people. The new people sometimes don't really know what to do. And there's no supervisors out here watching them and training them to help them do what they do. We understaff. That's why it takes a long time. He said, that's why it took so long to get this street repaved. He said, because we don't even have enough people in Public Works to actually do the paving. And let's mind you, their contract has been expired for almost 2 years. So they're really upset about that. So when you start looking around the city, the question is not why are there so many nips being used? Why are they not being swept up with street sweeping or picked up with the trash? Because this administration has not invested the taxpayers' dollars back into the very services that they keep getting rising taxes to pay.
Is it partly because government everywhere is having trouble
No,
filling
it's not
slots?
government everywhere. I don't want to talk about everywhere. I done heard that story for so long. That's why I'm running for mayor. I'm tired of hearing that same stuff. It's COVID. It's COVID. It's COVID. Here's Abdussabur's response to running for mayor when I hear that again. It's not COVID. Okay? It's not COVID. It's leadership. It's prioritization. When you have the resources to do something and you have the knowledge to be able to do it, if it's not being done, there's two things happening. Either you haven't prioritized to do it for the people or you just don't care about the people. And that's what I keep seeing over and over and over again in this city under this administration. And I've had it. I've absolutely had it. So you know what I said to myself? You know what? Self? That's right. Everybody knows it. I'm retired from the police department. I got a pension. You know what, Self? I don't work for nobody. Nobody don't own me. You know what, Self? The people need you. The people needs leadership. The people need somebody that understands what it's like to chase a cutoff notice for their light bill. You know what that's like? Dude, that is the most stressful thing you could possibly imagine. When your lights are on winter protection, you got to go file an asthma or whatever the medical thing is with your doctor. You're praying that they don't turn off your lights. They sent you the shut off notice. Now you got to hope that, hey, I woke up this morning, is the ceiling fan on or off? Because if it's off, I got no lights and I got no way to pay the money. You call a light company up and say, listen, can I make payment arrangements? They say, oh, no, you can't make payment arrangements because you was 1 day late with your payment or whatever the case might be. So now they give you 24 hours to shut off your lights. Your lights go off. Now you got to try to call back. Nobody want to talk to you. You got to get on the phone. You got to call the state utilities company try to file a claim or get help. They call back the UI company. Meanwhile, the lights is starting to get dark. You don't want to be in the dark. Your family's looking at you like you're crazy. And then finally you get a 24 window to keep your lights on. And that's crazy. This is what people are dealing with in the city. They're dealing with evictions. They're dealing with, do I pay my car note? Do I pay the insurance for my car? Do I pay my light bill? So I understand that, Paul. I get that. I was a public servant on a police officer's salary. We didn't make a lot of money, okay? And you worked for every dime you got. You got a wife staying home. You got children being taken care of. You're trying to raise your kids. You're sharing that salary, Paul. You're sharing it. They don't pay you for you and your wife the same amount of money. You got teachers out here making what, $50-something thousand a year, $56,000 a year. They are taking $3,000 out of their check every year, paying for school supplies that they shouldn't have to pay for. Then they got to worry about how they try to pay rent, feed their family. Then they get off work at what, 3, 4 o'clock. They got to go home. They got to do homework correction. They got to do other stuff to prepare for the next day, the lesson plan. They're not being compensated
When you
for
brought that up, the mayor brought up they just raised the salaries a lot for the
They
teachers.
raise the salary for 15%. They don't even know how they're going to pay for those salaries this year. I already talked to the board of all the people. How are we paying 15% for a salary increase for the teachers? I don't know.
But are you hitting on both sides? Raise it more. You raised it, but you can't pay for it.
No,
Is that
here's the
is that
thing. No,
fair?
this is what I'm saying is we need control spending in this city.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have control spending. First of all, we don't even have a comp controller. We have an interim budget director. That's the other problem. We got an unfilled city administration. And we've been running this kind of ragtag, unfilled city administration for the longest. For the last 3 years, we ran the city for a whole year without a CAO. And if I'm not mistaken, that year we had 25 homicides. How do you run a city without a CAO with 25 homicides, right? Which was literally like what, 70% more than the prior administration.
So at the risk of, I love the passion. I love when you get worked up.
No, you got me going.
No, I love
man.
it. I
You
don't
got
mean
me
to stop.
going.
I love to get you going. That's what you do. But I want to still get back to nips.
Go back to the nips.
Why we're
Go
seeing
back
more
to-
nips on the ground?
We need more people to clean up the nips.
But is it maybe not the cleanup, but the throwing the nips down in the first place?
How about we don't have enough trash cans throughout the city? That's a park and rec issue. How about park and rec is understaffed? How about the parks director just abruptly quit during the summer because he got frustrated about how the department was being run? We can't keep people. What is going on in this city that no one wants to work for this administration? That is insane. Go talk to the people, because I'm talking to them. I just don't talk. I talk to people. Go talk to the people that have left this administration and ask them, why did you leave? Why are we not doing exit interviews? We want to be transparent. Let's do some exit interviews. Let's bring back the people that have recently left the city throughout this entire administration and ask them. I encourage you to bring them on the show. Hey, why did you leave?
You just gave example of someone who didn't want to speak.
Right.
But so what are you going to do about nips if you're mayor?
What am I going to do about MIPS? The first thing I'm going to do is invest in the quality of life of our residents. That's how you handle NIPS. You look at the areas of this city that are desperately suffering with lack of resources. You look at the ARPA money that's just sitting somewhere.
That's federal pandemic relief.
Right, in the coffers. You look at, even the money from the Board of Ed, it's sitting in coffers, $43.9 million to close the educational achievement gap since COVID. They've had the money for 2 years. The state has already said it. The state legislature have already talked about it. The money has not even been exhausted, and we still got this massive learning gap. We are the lowest achieving district in the metros of New Haven. And in fact, if you go and look nationwide, we are one of the lowest performing school districts in the nation.
All right, so
after
we've
COVID.
made the pivot. You asked the maker. Listen to Shafiq Abdussabur. He's running for mayor of the city of New Haven. We're talking about that Dateline New Haven. You said at your announcement last week, as did Tom Goldenberger, another candidate, that education is going to be the number one issue of this
Education
campaign.
is the number one. Listen, here's the thing. I've been a cop for 21 and a half years, right? And let me tell you something. You know, you hear folks say, oh, street outreach. We've got the street outreach program. I wrote street outreach. I designed street outreach. I walked street outreach along with all the other folks that helped pilot it, Dougie Bethia, Edward Booker,
Terrence.
William Outlaw Terrence, Trent Butler. Okay, the list goes on and on. All the young brothers I work with, okay? We walked that program to Tampa, Florida to get the All-American City Award. That is an All-American City Award #1 winner out of 16,000 cities. Street outreach. Who wrote it? Me.
So it was
So
about
hold
the
on a
school.
second,
We're
Paul.
talking about the
So
schools.
hold on a second, Paul.
Okay.
So when this administration touts their violence prevention plan being street outreach, you're touting my plan. When they stand on that as their mission, you're standing on my shoulders, and that's probably why they hurt so bad.
But you
right?
praised Renee Dominguez, who was against the street outreach worker program, who had that program almost over because of the way she ran the department.
Hold on a second,
I'm not
Paul.
going to let that go.
I did not praise her.
You did. You said she was a good chief. You shouldn't have lost her.
No,
we
I did not.
We would not have street outreach today.
Those
if
are
she was
your
still chief.
words, Paul. Those are your words. What I said was, I said Renee is compassionate. She is a very focused, I believe, and committed law enforcement officer, in that she was set up for failure by this administration. She did. Let me just say this: she didn't voluntarily withdraw her name from running again as the chief.
How would you feel if we didn't have a street outreach worker program today? If she'd been confirmed and it was all gone?
Well, here's what I'm gonna say. I wrote that program. I believe in that program. I believe in the values and what that program can be. Anybody knows me knows that I will fight for what I believe in, and I will advocate that.
Okay, so we're talking about schools.
And here's why I got to understand this, Paul. Because when Mayor DeStefano appointed me to the chief's office to design a strategy, here's what he said: I need you to help me fix this problem. What was the problem with him Dr. Mayo had? They had 6,000 kids that were truant. There were 6,000 truant kids in the city of New Haven, right? And so I came in and I solved two problems. First problem we had was people were coming in from prison. They had no job, and there was no job opportunity.
25 a week got dropped off
Right?
at the Whaley jail.
And then on top of that, we had 6,000 truant students, right? So I'm going to break it down to you why school is so important. We took the first 200 top most at-risk children in high school, and we identified them. We split them up between Yale Child Study, Donald Morrison's CCC, the Brotherhood Leadership Summit. We split them up with Scott X and his anti-violence program. Yeah, and we split it out across all the community partners, right? Because that's part of a community violence intervention plan model, right? And then they went out and they worked with those young people. But the street outreach program, what was so significant of it is I said it must have a few criterions. The people coming home from prison, you must give them a job. You got to give them a full-time job, and also got to give them medical benefits and days off. You got to treat them just like you would treat any
How
other
did you get them jobs?
value citizen. Because when we wrote the program, it turned into, I think, a request for qualifications.
Okay. Cool.
It got awarded to Black Family Alliance, and then Barbara Tinney brought them in, and she hosted the program, where she did a brilliant job, right? So what that did, so people say, but why are you not talking about education yet? Why is education so important? Because I understand it from the inside. Why do I understand it from inside? Because those young men coming out of incarceration know what it's like to have their education interrupted. They know what it's like to be on the street because somebody might want to shoot you, or you might want to shoot somebody. They know what it's like to be out on the street because you can't eat and you hungry and you got to grind. They understood that. So who's better at helping them get back in school and connecting them with adult ed or encouraging them to get back in school than them? And so they became the bridge to bring them across, if you want to call it, the trouble.
Got them
That's
hooked.
right. They're the bridge to bring them across troubled
So
water.
that was the 200 most in danger, which is a big deal. Big deal.
Absolutely.
What about the 20,000 kids in
Absolutely.
school?
So here's a problem you have now. You have no plan. I told you what my plan was. That was my plan. It worked. That plan right now, this administration.
That was for 200 people.
Yeah. No, Paul. We said the top 200 people is what we focused on.
Which is important.
Right.
I'm not
But it was
belittling it. I'm not belittling
but
it.
it's for all kids. So
I'm
you
not
say, okay,
belittling
but what else did you do, Shafiq? Well, you know what else I did? I wrote training workshop programs for truancy that I taught to truancy officers and truancy directors. Charles Blango can vouch for that.
So you're saying you have the bio, you have the experience.
Yes.
What about now? Reading scores are low, and we were the last holdout in Connecticut to teaching reading with phonics emphasis.
Here's the deal. I talk to teachers, and teachers are telling me here's a problem. Problem number one is we don't have enough teachers in the school. We're down 130 teachers. Problem number two is because we don't have enough teachers in the school, they now have to double up classes. They've got deans over at Hill House right now acting as teachers, and those deans are just sitting in the classroom with students because they're not teachers. So the students are just in there doing whatever. Right? They're not being taught. They're not learning. So that's obvious a problem. We also have a problem, and they said this themselves. I didn't say it, with there's not enough substitute teachers. They can't find enough substitute teachers.
You don't pay much, right? Was it $75 a day?
Listen, they can't find enough substitute. So as a result of that, you're short substitute teachers. So now you're short teachers, you're short substitute teachers, and now you're using auxiliary staff as teachers who are not trained in the educational skills for learning. So our kids are going to be further pushed behind. So now you want to talk about reading. So these students have a reading gap. Well, they had $43 million sitting there for 2 years to use for that reading gap. And now we're saying, well, it's COVID. It's not COVID.
Okay, now with the reading, I want you to address this question if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
There's a fundamental question that said if we had spent that money teaching them to read the way we have been, we would have been teaching them not to read. That there's something called balanced literacy versus structural literacy.
Okay, here's the deal.
There's been a national consensus in a state law that Gary Winfield worked on that said that the brain science for the last 20 years said that the country with tens of thousands of school systems had a curriculum designed by Lucy Calkins that had people looking at words, trying to guess them based on a picture, looking at what the whole word looked like rather than phonics, and that the research over and over and over again showed that was teaching poor kids, rich kids, every kid not how to read. So the rich kids got tutors and the poor kids didn't. Lucy Calkins, who designed that and made a career, admitted this and gave up. We have a state law that you can't do that anyway. This school board was fighting to keep the old method and saying because all kids learn differently because there's like a 5% kids who need a different way.
So go back.
So where do you stand on that?
So here's where I stand on this, man. So we're going to play this placebo effect with our kids' education, right? Oh, we don't think you're going to be able to learn, so we're just not going to. School is a place for learning. It's a place to help children realize their potential, their creativity, their self-worth. There's more to learning in a school, okay, than getting stuck in a study. My child comes to school, teach them what you have to teach them. Let me know where we might fall short as a parent and help me to close that gap as a parent. But don't not teach my kid.
Well, but you're not taking a stand on whether structured or balanced literacy, because this current administration's at the school board was the last one in Connecticut holding on to this balanced literacy thing. And people were saying you're teaching them not how to read. If we give you $100 million, your test scores are going to go down because you're teaching kids to look for cueing, it's called, what the picture looks like, rather than teaching them how to sound out words.
Okay, here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say you got students in the class, teach them how to read. If the old method they're saying is like, oh, well, it's going to help them identify and they're going to have lower test scores. We already know about these test scores. What do we know? Even President Obama talked about it. Test scores is not the end all to being able to measure somebody's intelligence. When I was in school, we took SATs. They're talking about getting rid of SATs. When I was in school, you could opt out and take an ACT. They're talking about getting rid of these type of ACT tests. When I was in school, they said you had to have a high school diploma in order to go to college, and then they changed it and said you could have a GED and then go to college. So we can't get stuck in an intellectual war on education with people who have PhDs and master's degrees in the economic ability to send their kids to private school. We are educating in New Haven, the New Haven underserved population that often is living in concentrated poverty. Something like 75% of our children are living in concentrated poverty. So how do we sit here and have a war? And here's the other thing. Even if this was a big discussion, then why don't we just have Board of Ed meetings in person like we should be having, instead of on Zoom? COVID's over.
And what would be the advantage in person?
In person, because you can actually have people come and attend. Everybody, this is what we learned with COVID. Okay, now that COVID's over. Every New Havener does not have good connectivity, meaning they didn't want to have good internet. Every New Havener does not have the ability to get on Zoom. Every New Haven citizen that might be concerned and want to have civic engagement may not know how to navigate their way through a Zoom. And a Zoom is a very depersonalized way to engage people into civic government or civic engagement. Why? Because you get on these Zooms and the chat is disabled. So, I say something that I want to say, everybody can't see it, and that's depending on the host or whoever's giving the meeting. The other thing too is it's one-dimensional. You can't be in the room to feel people's vibe. You can't socialize. You can't build community.
I will admit that I agree with you 5,000% on this.
Yeah.
Their side is more people actually, you on balance, are having more people participate, more people sign up for the Zoom. I will admit that I do agree with you on
And the
this
thing
one.
is, what people are, you can't have community without communicating to all people. You can't have the ability to have inclusivity if all people can't be included. It's like what we
I'm interested in what you're saying about in person, seeing someone's face, picking up a vibe. Tell me more
shaking
about
their
that.
hand or saluting them, or hey, how are you? How's your family? Right? That's how you build
connections.
Right. That's how you build.
Does that say something about the model of government? Whether that question I began with about whether you're looking for data-driven solutions, which aren't bad, or whether you're looking for a government that's based on personal connection.
I think it starts with the leader, right? Everybody has their own leadership style. Some people lead where they want to manage people, right? And then some people want to lead. Myself, I want to be a trust and inspire leader. I want to trust. I want to hire people, and if they're already there, I want to let them know, and I want to first equip them with the tools to be successful. Give them the resources so that they can cross the finish line, and then I want to trust that they will actually take that resource and grow. And then I want to inspire them with my leadership. If I've got to work alongside them for a minute and get it done, anybody in this city can tell you, any patrol officer, when I was a sergeant, I walked the beat with you. Any person that worked for me cleaning the schools, I clean those toilets, sometimes right along with them, sweating and the whole deal. So I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem getting my hands dirty. I don't have a problem getting down in the weeds so that people can understand I'm leading. I'm going to lead with you, and I'm going to work with you. So that's the type of leader that I am. I want to trust people. I want to inspire them. I want to encourage them. I want to be able to give them the tools to be successful. Because if we do that, if we bring that back to our city government and our city staff, and you know what that begins with? It begins with acknowledging you see them where they are. You don't let contracts for your essential city workers who were stuck in these buildings during COVID with the danger of bringing COVID home to their families with outdated ventilators in the city, because we didn't know then about COVID, right? So we know the ventilation was outdated, and they're stuck in these buildings. They're working in contact with the community, putting themselves at risk. And then after COVID, we don't negotiate their contracts. We drag our feet on negotiating the contract. All these central city workers, the dispatchers, the meter enforcement, the librarians, public works, parks department. We drag our feet. What does that say to the worker? Am I saying, oh, is that going to inspire you?
Isn't it a two-way street, though? I mean, you're not. You said you wanted controls on city spending. Isn't it up to the city government to not just say yes to every request?
That is such a knee-jerk reaction. That we hear that as a good tagline. We don't want to just say yes to the. Let me tell you something. Yesterday we celebrated Martin Luther King's birthday. Martin Luther King, everybody loves him. Everybody, gives accolades
now that he's
about
safely dead, that we don't have to talk about what he said.
But here's what he talked about. He died talking about poverty.
Sanitation workers.
He died talking about healthcare's disparities. He was a labor person. We know that pensions, labor and pension retirement or some type of retirement job is one of the most key wealth building.
Well, should the mayor say no ever to a union?
It's one of the most key wealth building, generational wealth building that you can do is be able to provide somebody with retirement.
Yeah, and pay
okay,
for it,
that's number one. Labor and unionized labor is massively important to the fiber to the fiber of our American economy. We can't deny that. You can't say to people, "Oh well, they're in the union and they're just making too much money."
No, I'm not saying that.
I know you're not saying that, Paul, but I'm saying it. And what I'm saying is, when you're committed and you understand the city that you are serving, you understand the city that you govern, then you understand that about people. You understand that they need that job to feed themselves. And I'm going to say this because I don't want to put out the exact city department, but the city department came to me. I met with their union, and they said, that they're taking home $375 a week after taxes, after the money gets deducted out for their like pension retirement. $375. So they got to go get 2 and 3 other jobs to work. That's a full-time job they're working for the city of New Haven. So we wonder why we can't keep dispatchers, record clerks, police officers, teachers. There are police officers, and here's the other thing. I got to say this too. You know, the mayor's plan for police reform was to take $4 million out of the police budget. When he took $4 million out of the police budget, and it's on record because you printed it, all right, so I'm not telling a mistruth, 48 police positions cut. 24 of them were detective positions. And then when those detective positions were cut, we went from having 11 homicides in the previous administration to having 22 homicides, 25 homicides, and then just most recently, we had 14 homicides, and it was celebrated until we had 3 homicides in like a week. But we only have 32 detectives. What would the city look like had we had those other 24 detectives added to our detective bureau right now?
You're talking to Shafiq Abdussabur. We're speaking with him. He's running for mayor of New Haven. You sometimes hear him on the other side of the microphone here at WNHH-FM. He's the co-host of Urban Talk Radio, one of my favorite shows, actually. And but today he's the guest. He's in the hot seat. So you were a cop for 21 and a half years. You had a lot of interesting experiences, but you were district manager in New Hallville.
Yes.
You ran the lockup at 1 Union Ave. You were the head of the National Association of Black Law Enforcement Officers. You were also an official of the New Haven Police Union, which is
That's correct.
majority white. So
I was also a founder. I was a founder of New Haven Police Union too.
And you were when they changed unions. You were the New Haven Guardians, right, which is a black police organization.
I helped found the New Haven Guardians, correct?
And you wrote a book, Black Man's Guide to Law Enforcement in America. You've consulted with the FBI. They bring you in to talk about policing
and Homeland Security.
So you got some chops here. So what's that going to mean specifically of what you might do differently with policing if you were the mayor?
I would bring back community policing.
What does that mean?
That means it begins with restaffing and retooling the police department. Now, so here's the thing. I know there's people out there.
And nationally, now, I know you don't like to hear this, but every police department in the country is having trouble hiring people.
I know.
They're offering them like all this money to sign up. They're flying them on airplanes. Shafiq, that's real.
It's real, but you know what? Here's the deal. I'm not concerned about what's happening all over the country. I'm concerned what's happening in the 20 square.
Okay, so restaffing. So at 18.7, I'm told. Anyway,
restaff. I'm concerned about the 20 square miles of New Haven, Connecticut.
So how are you going to restaff?
And so here's how you can restaff the officers. I put out a 10-point plan. It's not really being followed, right? What did I say in the 10-point plan?
You said tell the slumlords to give them a free apartment.
Well, no, I did not say that, Paul.
No, that was a good plan.
I did not say
you
that
said
word.
Give
that
free
language.
apartment. Oh, you used the word slumlord. That was my word.
I did not use that word.
You asked the landlords who have a lot of apartments.
That's correct.
To make apartments available to officers.
That's correct. So here's
that was a good idea.
So here's I'll give you a gummy, right? So that was my alder plan, right? So the mayoral, one of the mayoral plans, one of the clips would be, we know we don't have a lot of money to be able to give officers the top pay to compete with everybody else. But you can approach officers at the needs that keep them here. What would keep somebody living in a city, living in a home? What would keep somebody living in a city? An apartment with an income that they could be able to live their salary.
So you still have that idea of asking landlords to pitch in to get free apartments?
So I go beyond the pitch in, right? I go beyond the pitch in. Why? Because these are things that I learned as an alder. What I learned as an alder, number one, is our affordable housing ordinance is not really affordable housing because the AMI is off. So it actually exceeds almost
income.
Yeah, it almost exceeds being workforce housing. It's right between workforce and market rate housing. So since we are giving or have given tax breaks to all of these big corporations that come here to build for 10 apartments or whatever, what I would say is this. Bring back the officer resident program and reapproach these developers and say, listen, you really don't have affordable housing, but I know, you kind of do under our ordinance, but it was just not appropriate for what it needs to happen. Would you commit, right, for 5 years? We'll do it as a pilot. Could you commit, right, to putting officers into this apartment, right? And then what you do is you fix the rate. You put a fix on the rent, have the officer sign a contract.
So you'd have a lower rent.
You have a lower rent, have them sign
not free, but a subsidized
right,
rent.
Subsidized rent, have them stay there. They would have
so you're no longer talking about the management companies. You're talking about a different group now.
We're talking about a different group. I mean, the point is, here's the deal.
Officer residency was public housing. You're saying that, and public housing was good because you wanted people.
Yeah, but we don't really have public housing anymore, and you got to understand something, Paul.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm trying to get what is your idea?
Listen, we've got 3,000 people, Paul, on a waiting list,
right,
trying to get into public housing.
Good point.
So we don't even have the space anymore.
So you're saying go to the private developers in the boom
because we've already given them tax breaks.
So that's one idea for staffing. Give me another.
Yeah.
What else are you gonna do with bring back community policing? What does that mean? Walking beats or not?
No, I think the other part is I think you need to reevaluate the entire department. I think there needs to be another reevaluation. I said this publicly before, so it's not a secret thing. The last time the department was reevaluated was under Perf.
Perf in 2009.
And I was part of that.
The Billy White scandal.
I was part of that.
What are you looking at specifically?
So we need two things. Anymore? We need to determine the staffing that we have there now. Is it appropriate for what the needs are of the community at this current time, based on the things that we have heard? And
everybody says they need more cops. The cops are working 14-hour shifts now. It's 3 times a week.
But hold on a second, Paul. Let me finish this. Right? Let's think about let's get an assessment to come in to hear from the community about what the community needs. Here's why I know. Because top tier number 1 law of community policing, you can't police a community unless they allow you to police it. And in order for that to happen, you've got to hear from the community. So we need somebody to come down, give us a study in 30 days, 60 days, go out to the community, hear from them, look at department structure, see where we need to modify or move things around. Talk with.
Do you have any early indications where you think structure can change? We do need to update when
talk to Florencio Ocado. Right, from the union, make sure the union's on board, because we often do things in the city and the union's not on board. We do things without participating with the union, then we fall into these.
We're running out of time because you and I can talk for 4 hours, and we sometimes do, and I enjoy it always.
Right,
but we're on air now. So I want to ask you about housing before you leave.
Gotcha.
What are you going to do about the problem landlords? We have a lot of.
So I think what we need to do is
big groups have more low-income housing, subsidized housing than the housing authority does.
Again, same thing I said with police department. We have to start looking at LCI, and the same thing. We need to look at the evaluation of LCI and see if the model is working efficient and effectively for the needs of the community. We have to get the community back to the table. Right? And here's the other thing. We've got to get the community involved in the conversation. But the problem is there's no transparency. No one knows what's going on. The websites for the city are difficult for people to navigate. Who's answering the phone at City Hall? City Hall's been closed since COVID. It's like a little keypad thing. It's like a Star Trek. Yeah. So we really got to get back.
So you say reevaluate, Lisa. So we're running out of time. I want to give you a chance to close on whatever you want to close on. Is there some moment you've had so far in the campaign that showed you what you face or why you want to be the mayor? Is there something special that surprised you or struck you now that you're running for mayor that you want us to know about?
So, yes. I've had workers reach out to me since I ran, and they said to me, Shafiq, we understand it was a tough decision for you to step down from the Board of Alders. We understand that you had checked with the legislative clerk's office before you ran, and you knew that you had a green light to do it. And we understand that, after you got on and you learned that it was a conflict of interest, you had to choke up and sacrifice your ambition for being an alder and serving your community for us, because for me, that job, and this is what they told me. They said, one of the workers told me, they said, with tears in the eyes, they said, I would have never had this job had it not been for you, but because you gave me this job, not only was I able to take care of my family, I was able to buy a house and get a pardon. So, it just brings it back to me. Sometimes we do things, for ourselves, and sometimes we do things for others. And so this run is really, it's about other people. It's not about me. And I'm ready. I'm ready for the challenge. I'm ready to lead this city. I am massively excited. And my mama gave me permission to run.
Your mama gave you permission.
Mama gave me permission to run.
Mama said you could run.
Yeah, okay. Yes, she did.
In that case, we're going to have you back, including when you're not doing your own show.
Yeah.
So, Shafiq Abdussabur, thanks for hanging.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate you.
I love
Thank you,
interviewing you.
New Haven Independent.
And And thanks to Harry Drost, because he is the number
Thank
one
you,
man
Harry.
behind the controls.
You are the number one man behind the controls.
And we're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience, which is the number one band for theme music for the show, playing I Wonder how it would feel to be free.
Yeah. Don't forget to register to vote, people. You gotta vote. I'm going to have a vote song.
All right. Well, Afro-Semitic Experience playing I Wish I Knew How to Be Free from a CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.